Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing the new Patience is a Virtue seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which every turn all the cards in our hand get transformed into random cards that cost one more provision, giving us a random match of sorts. But there is still a way to create an effective deck for this event, so let's go give it a look. So today we'll be playing a modified version of a Scoia'Tael deck that we've used in the past for this event that checks all the big boxes that you want to check in this event. Because although our hand gets randomized every turn, there are still ways we can make our deck more effective. That includes having cards that can get summoned out from our deck like Roach, Best Boy, and Aelirenn, though she is definitely much more difficult, much less likely for you to get her out from your deck, because this time around we're using Precision Strike, which gives us decent damage, and then a Brokilon Sentinel for even more damage, and summon out another Brokilon Sentinel from our deck, assuming that we get the death blow there, which the tricky thing with that is that we do have one, and precisely one, Brokilon Sentinel in this deck, which means slightly less effective than the usual leader ability. The reason for that, though, is because one of the other things that we're trying to do in this deck is keep as many conditional cards possible as we can, with things like 25 units in our deck, so if we happen to get a random Renfri, we can still use that. Nothing that costs more than 9 provisions, so if we get a Ciri or a Golden Necker, those can still work. And no duplicates in our deck either, so that if we get either a Redea or Shoop's Day Off, those both still work. That is why we only have one Brokilon Sentinel. Up to you if you feel like you'd rather have a stronger leader ability, then you could add another Brokilon Sentinel, and in that way that means Redea and Shoop's Day Off no longer work for you. That is technically a little bit more consistent, but the high end is of course better if you can get a couple of those really strong cards to work, but of course there's no guarantee you'll ever get those cards. The other thing is that we do have 10 or more unique categories in our deck, so that means that Saskia Commander works as well, and that can be another really effective card in this event, but of course we don't have either Saskia Commander or Renfri in our starting deck because otherwise we'd have cards that cost more than 9 provisions. So since there aren't that many high provision cost cards, it's still somewhat common that you get a random one of these showing up in your hand, and it does mean that when they do show up, they're almost certainly going to be the best card for you to play. That's just about all there is to it. So with that being said, let's go see it in action. Alright, going up against Northern Realms here, and we'll go first. Alright, so let's kind of try to keep Roach in deck, and we like to keep Aelirenn as well. A little bit tougher to keep her, or get her summoned out later. Like to keep Best Boy in deck as well. Okay, so I think we actually did pretty well in that regard. And we did have some cards of various different strengths and provisions in our starting hand here. So, Prophet's actually a little bit interesting, but Living Armor is the best point slam. It is also one of our higher provision cost cards, which on one hand means we'd kind of like to play it before it turns into a brick. On the other hand, it is, yeah, you know, we have enough well-rounded cards here that it's not as if we're going to be stuck playing something really bad if we play this now. That'll also get out Roach. Okay, Melusine. Did see that we have Lock here, but of course Melusine has Veil, so it's not exactly something we're going to be able to put to good use here. Leader ability we'd like to use this early, in round 1 really, and that means we have 5 points of damage once you factor in the Sentinel as well, which is not quite enough to get rid of Melusine, but we'd probably like to target Melusine if we can. I mean, Lacerate technically gets Melusine low enough, or we could, you know, just go after Roach, I suppose. Otherwise, I mean, not amazing options here. Oddly enough, Milva actually might not be that bad. No, but she's movement now. Yeah, no thanks. Take our chances on Letitia? We'll take our chances on Letitia. And, sure. 1, 2, then put you there. Get the other one out from our deck. We only have one Brokilon Sentinel in our starting deck, so that way, if we do happen to get a Shoop or a Redea, it does still work. It's a bit of a case we made one way or the other there. Obviously, our leader ability would be stronger if we were to do that, so if you're... Oh, that's very, very good. So if you'd like to, you can obviously make that modification to the deck, make the leader ability stronger by adding in another Sentinel. It's just 4 provision, so it's not a huge deal there, provision cost-wise, but it does mean that Shoop's Day Off and Redea don't work, which is, you know, up to you which one you prefer to optimize around. See, we have a Defender, which, I mean, who knows if Letitia's going to be relevant? Gabor is probably the best option here. Xavier, we don't have the armor on him. Don't have any warfare cards. Dandelion, I mean, we could use him plus Crystal Skull and maybe be able to deck boost something there, but unlikely for that to be a big factor. I guess we'll go Gabor for the resilience. In general, although that is nice to get the carryover, of course, if you are playing the resilience cards early on in the round, then usually there's enough time for your opponent to answer them fairly easily in some way, shape, or form, whether it be through damage or purification or something like that. Spirit, they're getting huge point slams here. Okay, well, for what it's worth, Doo is pretty incredible because we can basically just copy their 18-point Ignatius Hail. So that looks like that is a very clear and obvious choice here. The downside of this is it's 8 provisions, which is a decent number in that it's sort of middle of the pack, but we have some other higher provision cost cards like Crow Mother at 10. What else? Meve is 9. Glace is 10. So if we don't play one of these two, then I mean 11 is certainly playable, but we just run the risk of those eventually getting to the point where they could turn into something that, you know, it's like a scenario, which is not great. But yeah, there we get that 18-point Ignatius Hail, which is obviously huge, because we don't get the deployability when we're using Doo to transform. That's exactly what I was referring to. Play an early resilience unit, and there's oftentimes enough opportunity for your opponent to purify or remove via damage. Vivian for a point slam. What's her highest provision cost card? Is Living Armor, I think. Shawnee, I don't think has anything. Tin Boy is a high provision cost card here, 11. They have a decent number of things, not a huge number of things, stacked up in that range row, so that's probably the obvious choice here. Otherwise, I mean, there's actually a case to be made. Foltest next to Brokilon Sentinel, which is our only bronze card here, so the only one that it could create extra copies of in our deck. However, it also, if we do find a way to get our leader ability back, could make that much stronger in the future. So if we got this before we used our leader ability, that would have been amazing. Obviously didn't anticipate that that was going to be something we could do, but alright, we'll give it a shot. We'll throw the Crystal Skull on Foltest as well to keep him going. Ivar, the 18, surely, right? Yep. That's absolutely huge. I mean, this is just about as good as it could have possibly been for them, but everything's just amazing points. And Vertiseal is really good. Is it enough for us to catch them on this turn? I'm not sure that it is, and if we don't catch them on this turn, then we're in pretty big trouble, because then they could pass. Let's see, so you are what? I forget. You're an 11, I believe, range row, right? Spawn in, there's 6 points collectively, you're 5-point body, so 11 total. Get up to 54, 1 extra point from Foltest, 55 is still 56 if they pass. It's still not enough. So I think we need to bail right now, because that Ivar, I mean, Ignatius, Old Spirit Tip, Ivar stealing an 18-point power unit, that's just absurd. Alright, and we have gotten most of the cards that we wanted to summon out from our deck already summoned out, so no major bricks here to be too concerned about. There is a chance we could actually get Ardfian summoned back out later, so I suppose might as well put you back in. Then other than that, mostly looking at provision cost management here. We have an 11 provision cost Villain Mirth and 12 provision cost Yaga, so, and 13 provision cost Regis. So you're very likely to turn into a scenario if we don't put you back into our deck now, and you might be able to get a little bit bigger if we do keep you in our deck, so it's probably the way to go there. So they won round 1, which means they will almost certainly push here. Which means tempo-wise, we need to be really mindful of being sure that we are always in front of them, points-wise, otherwise they could pass and we'll be a card down. Ooh, you notably do not have immunity because you're not from their starting deck. So that does make matters a little bit more interesting here. We could hit you with Circe. The hand boosting is meaningless because we will get all these cards changed at the start of our next turn. So you're actually not great for that. I mean, you do still have Harmony, but 7 provisions here are also probably the lowest provision cost card we have here. Or one of them at the very least. Emir is potentially great, but we unfortunately would not catch them pacing-wise, so we can't really do that. Gaunter arguably could be the solution here. Might actually go for that. Kind of a middle ground. Except, I mean, you're gonna lose the Doomed when you... Okay. It was not a good play. They're gonna lose the Doomed when they Actually, they cannot replay Scratchlot. It's actually amazing. I take it back. Scratchlot will get destroyed if they try to use that order ability, I believe, after the rework a few months ago. And so they will pass. And that is why we made sure that we outpaced them with that play, and kind of sort of accidentally hard countered that card without realizing it. No, that was totally intentional. Totally intentional. Alright, so again, Ardfiend is basically the only thing here that could still give us some value while hanging out in our deck, so I think we do put that back in. And then Passiflora at 14 in a long round 3. We know it's going to go the full length. There is actually enough time for this to loop back around into a probably mid-provision card, so this is not necessarily a brick. If we're patient with it, let's just look at, do we have stuff that is around the same number? That War Elephant is, I think, what I'm eyeing here. So if that is not something we like on turn 1, that is probably going to be a brick. Aelirenn was one other thing that we potentially wanted to try to keep in deck. Unlikely we would have gotten the chance to get any value out of her because it would have required a whole bunch of elves, which is certainly not something we can guarantee, but let's see what our options are here. Kira has some serious potential. I think that is the right play here. It's going to be a little while until we can actually use her, and the longer it takes, the less time we have to capitalize on that vitality, but there is some chance that it could be quite useful for us. Keldar. Long term, once he gets down to Adrenaline 4 is a threat. I am eyeing Dandelion plus whatever we draw into, or... I mean, Caretaker is the biggest point slam and could be next to Ciaran, in which case that's not a bad target for her order ability otherwise. Boris is a little bit too low on the damage to take out Keldar, especially since we obviously don't have our leader ability anymore. But I think it's definitely Dandelion. It's not going to be you. Probably is Caretaker, and, you know, who knows, maybe we will find some use for Purification later. It's a case to be made for waiting to see if we can get a bigger unit than Dandelion next to Kira, but there is always the chance that they could lock Kira, or damage her, destroy her, what have you, so I'm going to play a little bit safe with her. So that's still, I mean, certainly with a 7-point Caretaker, getting 7 vitality on him is not bad at all. Villain Tretmirth is not what we want to see right now, because there goes our big Caretaker, unless we could Giga Scorpion Decoction that Villain Tretmirth, which is looking like the best solution here. Absolutely. Okay, now, the risk here is whatever this was before was one of our higher provision cost cards. We didn't play it for a few turns. It's going to flip all the way into a 14 provision cost card, likely a scenario, and that means that it's probably going to brick, and we're just going to have to not play it, and hopefully by the time we get near the end of the round, it's going to be a high enough provision card that it's still not bad, but that remains to be seen. Having played a Skellige card in an earlier round is a bit of a way to circumvent that to a certain extent, because one of the other 14 provision cost cards that is not a scenario is Fukusia, and so if you do have a Skellige unit in your graveyard, then that is a decent way to work around that. Oh, hold on, that's scary. That's scary. Okay, at first I saw the 3-point shooter, I was like, oh, that's not a threat. Then they did that. Creative use of the leader ability. That was very well done. Okay, let's see. You are a Witcher. Could go Ranger Leo, which 7 points right now, but assuming that Keldar is going to start spawning out Witchers in the not too distant future, that's not a terrible idea. If we had more units on the board, then Frog Mating Season would not be bad, as we were saying before. This turned into a brick as expected. Who knows what Bribery could turn into? We could lock Keldar instead. I think this is still probably worth more points long term. Orb of Insight, who knows if we'll be able to get it back out with the additional copy from our graveyard later on. I kind of am doubtful of that. I think we go for Leo here. Just make sure it's the right row. Because it does need to be ranged. Okay, do for Caretaker, Purify our Caretaker, I imagine. Okay, so we got some value, what, 3 points worth of boost from the Vitality, but not quite as much as we would have liked there. It's unfortunate, but could have been worse. Meave. Probably the best high-end potential here, although the sneaky pick here is absolutely Hjalmar, banish a Ignatius or a Living Art. Wait, does it have to be a Skellige unit? Any unit, okay. So we could banish Ignatius and get rid of their Caretaker if we'd like to. That's probably the right play here. What is your provision cost? 9? Okay. You have to be melee, right? Yeah. So, on one hand, there's some potential, like that's overkill damage there, of course, but there's some potential that we might have gotten something like an Osrel that could have consumed that from our graveyard to get a bunch of extra value, but there's also a chance our opponent could have done that. There is also an Ignatius in their graveyard, though, so I think, you know, if we do end up getting Osrel, there's still that option to do that. Alright, Helvede, 10 points, plus potential for more if they get more coin generation later. For us, this is a bit of an interesting one, because speaking of coins, if we had a source of coins, the Scoundrel wouldn't be bad. We could still play him. He's going to be 12 points minus whatever they summon out, but we have no way to benefit from his order ability to turn those coins into points, into damage. Barnabas, not really here. Ciri Dash is the other option. We have enough time if she lives, but she's obviously going to be a humongous target for them. Probably have to take that chance. Probably do still need to take that chance. If they lock her, we could Purify with Caretaker. So that is one way in which we can circumvent a potential counter. Beauclair. We do have the highest unit right now. Oh. I mean, no, we shouldn't Scorch, although that is interesting to see. There's, let's see, you're 11 provisions, right, as is Foltest, so we really should play one of them. Otherwise, they're going to potentially turn into a brick unless there's a chance at 12 we could still get something decent, but if we don't, then by the time we get to 13, 14, we could be in a lot of trouble there. It's late enough in the round that Foltest is not amazing, but we could put him next to Ciri as a way to help keep her a little bit safer. So I think at this stage they are in the lead, and we've played one more card than them, so I really think that getting the card draw from Ciri is, at this point, probably our win condition. Ooh, that could be interesting. Siege. We'll deal damage in our range row, but I don't think that's a huge issue. I think we go Letho into a second Ciri, which normally would not have enough time. But because we're getting the extra card draw from this Ciri, I think it might still be one turn too slow. Otherwise, is there anything else we would obviously want to transform into? It could be another Foltest, could be another Caretaker. We don't change power, so even though Caretaker is higher base power, that's not a reason to do it. Ratcatcheress does have the highest base power here. We are not on Sabbath, although we are extremely close. In fact, would be on Sabbath as soon as we get that boost. Herald is the highest provision cost card. Do we have any Skellige stuff? No. So that is, again, a reason for potentially going with Skellige. So I think the math is such that we don't have time for a second Ciri. If we did, that would be the right play. But I believe we do not. It's certainly if she gets destroyed, we don't. So I'm going for the second Foltest. Okay, that's fine. Now I think we do... Now this is a situation we were talking about before. High provision cost card. If you don't play it, it has a risk of bricking here. Sim loss, we still have potentially one, but now we drew to our bronze special card at some point in time, and it got changed into something else, so you're a complete brick, so we obviously are not going to play you. Frogmating Season, solid, but it does mean this could be an issue on our next turn. But now we go and we do... I mean, on one hand, I'm trying to avoid having one really high power card that our opponent is going to be able to potentially toll removal on. But Ciri should activate here. And that is not the card we wanted to draw into because it was a high provision cost card, which means it is a scenario, which means both of these are bricks, which is not what we wanted to see. It does, however, mean that card draw gives us one more turn. They did not do anything instead of Terra Nova. Assimilate, more generally speaking, is of course fantastic early on in the round because everything is going to trigger it. But I think here we're basically just looking at, neither one of these are going to give us great value. This is just 3 points. This is 5. Actually, potentially a little more than that, right? Okay, yes, this is a little bit better. But the bigger thing from Ciri is just giving us one more turn to get the boost from the Vitality and from the full test. Anything we want to purify? I mean, we can't purify that. Oh, the Bulk Layer is going to be a counter for the full test, though. I mean, that's why, again, we didn't want to load all of our boosts up on any one singular unit. Also, this is Warlock to the melee row, which is a little crowded at the moment. Okay, they will not have time to use that spotter. They will reset Hjalmar. They'll get a little bit of damage there, but we should, through the full tests, have enough boosts here that we do not even need to take this turn. I mean, when it's this close, usually just in case I'm forgetting something, I do like to take it just to play safe. Technically, doing Drakkar first and then doing that would have been better, but should be fine here. Should be fine here. Alright, so going up against Syndicate here, and they'll go first. Alright, and we did unfortunately draw into several of the cards that we want to keep in our deck. Roach, Best Boy, and Aelirenn. Of all these, since we only have 2 mulligans we can use here, these 2 are pretty reliable. It's tough to get Aelirenn out in this deck, so I think we'll swap those 2 around. Alright, they're going to start with Mad Ciaran. They go Range Row, where he gets a little bit of a boost. I was curious to see if they're going to use Crystal Skull on him, because we did get a Regis Higher Vampire, which, if they do put more boosts on him, they could remove our Regis before we can use Regis on Ciaran. Let's see. Alternatively, nothing for a Raucous Queen to consume, although the high-end potential on that obviously would be pretty solid. Royal Decree. We could lock Ciaran. Could get a defender out here. We do have Resilience, but I don't like playing Resilience turn 1. Because almost 100% of the time, your opponent will have a consistent way to either purify or just outright destroy whatever that card might be. So for that reason, we'll play it safe here. We'll get a defender out, and then, if we get other things like Anna Strenger or King Foltest, who are engines that could benefit from a little bit of protection, or even Frexinate, then they could certainly benefit from having Figgis here. They're going to go after Figgis. I imagine they will. But we could then proceed to boost Figgis regularly. So Anna Strenger has more potential for boosting purposes, because if she gets boosted, then she can boost on both sides of herself. Foltest can only boost on one side of him. If we could somehow get additional Brokilon Sentinels into our deck from Foltest, our leader ability suddenly becomes amazing. That's going to be pretty tough to do, though, but you're a higher provision cost card, so if we don't play you, you have a higher chance of bricking, a significantly higher chance of bricking. Frexinate also is not terrible, although I think the chances of us getting nature cards consistently is not necessarily something we want to rely on. So I think we're going to go Foltest here. Technically not the highest point play, but the safest play, I believe. Ooh, that's not bad. It is technically early, but not bad. We also do not have any cards that cost 10 or more provisions from our deck, so we can use Ciri Nova if we would like to. That is unfortunate, because we were about to have another card that was going to benefit greatly from having a defender to protect it. We could get another defender, if we really wanted to. That is an option. However, I think we can't really pass up this opportunity. And as much as we might want to put Ciri next to King Foltest to make her stronger, I think that runs the risk of, as soon as she hits 9, it becomes more feasible for them to destroy her. So I think we're going to deliberately hide her, or well, not put her next to Foltest. Put her there instead. We absolutely should have used leader ability on Van Molheim Cupbearer, because he's an assimilate unit, and I totally forgot about that. That was not the right... Well... Okay. Reasonable, but perhaps not the best option for that. Ooh. Ooh. And also, more resilience, although easier to... More one-dimensional. We do not yet have Sabbath, but we get relatively close if we were to do this. And... So this is what? It's 3 damage plus... Yeah. So that you were in removal range previous turn. We, without a doubt, 100% should have gotten rid of Van Molhem Cupbearer on our previous turn using leader ability. But now it's out of removal range. That's not really something that works. You're also out of removal range as well. So that really stinks. So I think it just has to be She Who Knows, and we're going to have to accept that... How's this going to get used? They're basically going to use it twice on She Who Knows, right? That's unfortunate, but I think we basically just have to force them to do that. We have to force their hand. Otherwise, they might have considered trying to do it on 2 rounds on Ciri to remove her shield and then get rid of her, or damage her significantly. Villain Trettenmirth is not what we want to see, although we do have a heat wave here. Here comes 1 leader ability. Oh, on Figgis? Oh, because now they... That's interesting. They were going to go on She Who Knows, but since they got Villain Trettenmirth, suddenly they didn't want to hit She Who Knows. But that means we could Heatwave Villain Trettenmirth, and suddenly the counter that they were relying on, they no longer have. So that's tempting. Radovid does also work. Radovid does also work, and is actually better. We have to use all of our leader ability charges here and now, but suddenly that means we do have enough to remove Villain Trettenmirth. So this will not activate the death blow, which is fine. But now we do this, which means we can do this, and then this. That does activate the death blow. Now we are on Sabbath. They don't have the way to remove She Who Knows anymore. And we can get 1 more leader ability charge from Radovid here. So this would be a perfect time for getting full test back, because then we could put a full test here next to Brokilon Sentinel, add more to our deck, get the leader ability charge back with Radovid, and that leader ability charge would be much stronger because we have a bunch of Sentinels we'd get from it. Okay. You remain annoying, though. I mean, 5 damage. You're likely to turn to a 7 on their next turn, which means Radovid might still be able to be enough to... The combination of these two, getting our leader ability back, might be enough to deal with you. They played 1 more card than us. They only just barely caught us. Huh. I think that is the answer, though. I think that is the answer. I'm tempted to just load up in the melee row, but to make sure that we absolutely have Sabbath, but I think we have enough cards there already that we just run the risk of causing other issues if they have wide punish. Especially in the melee row if they get something like Ezros. Terranova, they did create a spy. It was one of these, right? Yeah. I mean, not that that's huge, but that's annoying because... Okay, no, it's still just barely in removal range. That's fine. That's still fine. Okay. So... Don't have anything we can use on Blood Eagle unless we mulligan a Skellige card back into our deck at some point somehow, which we have not. Ooh. Speaking of wide punish. Also, not terrible, although we don't have that many humans. Probably need to turn either Radovid or... Yeah, I think it's still Wild Boar of the Sea. But anyways, let's finally do this, because you have been annoying. And they will forfeit. Wow. Alright, in that case, we'll take the win. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here. And we'll go first. Alright, so we did draw into a few cards that we want to keep in our deck, namely Roach and Best Boy. And outside of that, I think we probably settle for this. Well, we have both Reaver Hunters and a Reaver Scout in our hand, which is kind of hilarious. And a little bit tempting, in fact, because otherwise, we could start generating coins with Roderick, or we could proactively set up a Francesca and hope that we have enough special cards to benefit from her, or Botchling is... Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an engine as well. I think we might go Reaver Hunters, to be honest with you. And we might even go as far as to Crystal Skull on that, so that it is very likely to get the other copy of it on our next turn. And that is why we did that. Okay, so obviously we'll do this. The question now, though, becomes where do we go next? Because if we want to be really daring, Sarah could become huge. And the tricky thing there is we have basically 3 engines on the board, and they probably can't answer all of those on one turn. Well, they've double cross, which our hand is going to change at the end of this turn. Well, okay, apparently we're a Reaver's deck. Apparently we're just a Reaver's deck? I don't know, man. That's a little odd. It's a little odd, not gonna lie. Sure, they'll steal one of them, fair enough. Honestly, deserved. Now, however, we could Vandegrift's Blade, destroy one of them. I mean, we probably want to play something that costs a high amount of provisions. That way, we can make sure that this doesn't turn into a brick, which at 12 provisions, if we don't play this turn, you're likely to turn into a brick. What do you have in your graveyard? Nothing we can use. Blue Dream on. Saber-Tooth Tiger, assuming they can only play 1 unit on their next turn. 1 card would be protected, the other one would not, but they both have armor, so it's still not going to be great value out of Saber-Tooth Tiger in all likelihood. Ragnarok, either row, again, the armor mitigates some of the value to a certain extent, but I think we're just looking at points here in all likelihood. Let's see, they have none of these numbers, unfortunately. Tibor? Okay, well, fair enough. From one toxic archetype to another. Wish we could, I mean, we could put Vivian next to Royce. I was about to say put him next to Tibor, because he costs so many provisions, but you do too, to be fair. Okay, so probably Royce here, Vivian there. Technically, the Reavers will hit Tibor. Do we have anything else that we prefer? Do this to our own Reaver Hunter? No, no thanks. Okay, yeah, I think it's this. And then it's this. Just make sure we put her on the correct side. Card to the right, yeah. Like so. Okay. And there's a case to be made for getting our leader ability used quickly here, because we want to make sure we don't accidentally draw into our Brokilon Sentinel, which honestly I always forget to check for at the start of the match. All the more reason to try to deal with that as quickly as possible. We would like to deal with you as quickly as possible. That is going to be our leader ability target. 100%, and, well, this would have been a Tibor counter. Would have been. Problem is, by the end of this turn, Vivian is going to be higher than Tibor. So, Villain Trenmirth would destroy our own card rather than their card. So can't really do that. Does think would probably just settle for Resilience, which it's early enough in the round they may still be able to deal with that. But let's, before we forget, do this. Get rid of Dogger. Get our other Sentinel out. We did still have it. That's nice. We could put a Defender down. Melee row to protect this stuff. It's not a terrible idea. Again, I do think that the Resilience would get answered this early on. So gonna play it a little bit safer for that reason. I was just thinking that we were putting a lot of stuff in the melee row, and for that reason, we were making ourselves a little susceptible to a Gesros, and what shows up? None other than a Gesros. Alrighty then. Well, could hide Sienna behind the Defender and potentially get good value out of that. Otherwise, Yennefer a few turns earlier would have been amazing, because we did spawn in a bunch of stuff with leader ability and that Defender. But we've not lost a round yet, so this does not work. This is very speculative. This could potentially give us long-term value. We are also looking at a pretty big lead here for what it's worth. So, I mean, not that we really want to pass right now, but there is a case to be made for passing a little bit early. Yennefer would remove Best Boy. Or Reaver Hunters. Either one works, to be honest. Yeah, sure. We'll go for Yennefer. We'd like to find a way to get rid of Gesras. Which, ooh. Okay. But that did limit the value of Gesras to a certain extent. Bloodthirst 1 right now. Okay, that's not helpful. We do have the Death Blow for what it's worth. We do have a okay. Actually, might be the best option for us. Or Vilgefortz. You have a Reaver. We can't get Vilgefortz to give us a Reaver and play the Reaver before we'll transform, but at least deserves a mention. We could get a Reaver in our hand that would transform. More likely we'd want to get Dagger, which would transform into a random 11 provision cost card, or similarly with you. That's probably what, or, I mean, they haven't caught us, and we've played one fewer card than them, and it's not even close. So they are in a lot of trouble. They'll have another Philippa, which they did get rid of our other Reaver Hunter. Okay, so that's no longer all that effective. That's going to be worth a lot. I did not even realize we had Beauclair in our hand. But I still am not sure that's sufficient to catch us on this turn. So that means they're going to be card down, leader ability down for the rest of the match. We've also used our leader ability as well, but not enough. Not enough. Best Boy comes out as well. And they pass there, meaning we will win round 1 with 2-card advantage. Which means they will forfeit. Because there's just about no coming back from that. So there's a look at a Scoia'Tael deck for the new Patience is a Virtue seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below. Let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions we should experiment with next. And take a look at our Patience is a Virtue playlist to see previous decks that we've used in this event as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.